What's up guys and welcome back to On The Brick, where today I will not be reviewing the UCS Gunship. Let's be honest here, plenty of other people have already made review videos or discussion videos about this, and at this point you already know if you want it or not. And I also know that sometimes you don't watch the reviews to make your own opinion, but just to see what some of your favorite YouTubers think about the set themselves. Now, I am going to actually talk about this set in this video, and I'm going to be talking about a lot of things that I think other people should be, but really aren't. However, before I get into that, I will share my very quick thoughts on this set. I think it's wonderful. This is probably one of my favorite UCS sets, at least in recent years. I built it in around 8 hours over the course of 2 days, and the entire process was really fun. It does get a little tedious the further you get in because you start doing mirrored builds, but overall it's still really nice and it is so much bigger than you can possibly think. This is seriously a beast, and even though $350 is a little more expensive than a 3,000 piece set should be, it's totally justified in this case, and if you get the chance to get it, I would highly recommend it. Now, there are some flaws with this set. For instance, the back is a little flimsy and tends to pop out sometimes. I mean, it's supposed to open, but it should also stay closed. And of course, the minifigures. And this is where a lot of people tend to have problems, and justifiably so, but I don't think for the right reasons. So, you know what? Actually, let's get into this. If you are watching this in the future, then one thing you absolutely need to keep in mind is that this was not created by LEGO. I mean, it was. But the idea of a UCS Gunship actually came from a fan vote that they put out. LEGO provided 3 options that could be chosen: the Gunship, the Nebulon B-1 frigate, or the TIE bomber. Obviously, the Gunship won. But I genuinely do not think that LEGO expected it to. After all, they didn't start designing this until after the vote, which is really weird. Like, I can't guarantee that the other 2 original trilogy sets had any work done, because why would you work for free if you're not going to do it? But at the same time, if you're putting all 3 out there, doesn't that mean you want to do all 3? Anyway, the reality is, this was not even worked on at all until after the vote was finished. Now, I want to be clear here. The Gunship won, and it won by a lot, and certain personalities are going out there and saying that it's a huge part because of them, and while they absolutely did help, in reality, it was probably always going to win. So many people have been yearning for prequel sets, and the Gunship is probably one of the best choices for a prequel set, and literally every discussion I saw about the fan vote was about the Gunship. Yes, other people obviously wanted and voted for the other 2 sets, but a lot of people, the majority of the people, wanted this. But while I cannot confirm anything, I have to ask the question, is LEGO sabotaging this? Let me explain what I mean. Okay, remember the minifigures that everybody has a problem with because they should? These are not the minifigures that should have been included. When LEGO put out the fan vote, one of the questions that they asked when you picked the set you wanted was, what minifigures would you like to be included? I am absolutely 100% not the guy that was saying we should get Jedi Bob, because that literally makes no sense. Sure, he was in a single set and is a highly sought after minifigure, but it would literally have no point to be in this. Just because it's a Gunship really isn't justifiable reason enough. And while I personally did want a Phase 2 Commander Cody, I can also understand why he wasn't included, as we don't really ever see him in a Gunship. Which makes me wonder why we got these 2. Now, I'm pretty certain that the majority of people just said something like, oh, a Jedi and a clone. I'm guessing a lot of people probably didn't actually specify which Jedi or which clone. I know I didn't. I literally just said I would like any Jedi and a clone. For the record, I did specify that I wanted a Jedi we haven't had before. But even though that's what we got, these are the wrong choices, and in my opinion, say a lot about the designers of these sets. If you don't know, the designer of this set, when talking about the minifigures, actually came out and said, well, let's be honest, most people just remember that there was a clone with yellow markings piloting the gunship. And oh my goodness, is there so much wrong with that sentence. Like, you should be fired for saying that. Legitimately, you should just be straight up fired. Because what that statement shows is that you do not care about your target audience, you do not care about what your fans want, and you do not care to even make an actually good product. Yes, the actual gunship build is fine, and it really is. But do not insult your audience. You might not have the mental capacity to be able to tell the difference between clones, but the people who voted for this absolutely do. You might hate the prequels, but the people who voted for this do not. Just because you saw a 5-second scene and went, well, I guess the pilot had yellow markings, doesn't mean that everyone else is as stupid as you are. You legitimately should be fired and should not be making any more sets. And if you don't agree with me, that's perfectly fine, and if you think that I'm a little too hot-headed on that, I probably am. However, I do not want that mentality in sets going forward. But I'm not just upset because he said something really, really stupid. I'm upset because it is on this set. Seriously, think about it. Think about all the UCS sets that involve minifigures. Not a single one of them was given the same treatment. Not a single one of them had the same stupid statement said. We didn't just get random aliens in the UCS Super Star Destroyer because that's what people remember. We didn't just get some guy in orange for the Snowspeeder. In fact, it was the opposite. LEGO went out of their way to make new minifigures for one-time characters, really. Like, the Snowspeeder comes with Dak, who has, 10 seconds on screen? And yet, the one time that they make a prequel set with minifigures, they put zero effort into it? That honestly pisses me off. It is such a small thing, but it says so much about the designers behind this. Like, why Mace Windu? Why not Yoda, who we actually see in a gunship? I mean, sure, we see Mace Windu, it's that 5-second scene where he's shouting at the pilot to land in the assembly area, but in all of the other gunships made, Mace Windu was never a part of it, because he is not associated with the gunship. The clone commander is more okay. It's just a stupid comment that really annoys me. I don't really care too much about this one. I think other colors or whatever would have worked fine. But really, it just shows to me that they don't care. And that's why I don't think that they want this set to do well. But there's also more behind that. For instance, the designers did say that they've been wanting to make prequel sets and that if you want them, then you need to buy this. And part of the reason that they haven't made prequel sets is because the previous iterations didn't do well. And I think that is an incredibly disingenuous thing to say. To clarify, they didn't actually say that last part in the same statement, but it is a known fact. In fact, and I've actually said this on my channel before, there have been more remakes of original trilogy sets than there have been prequel sets at all. Still speaking about the UCS sets here, of course. The remade sets are the Y-Wing, the X-Wing, the Snowspeeder, the Death Star, the Millennium Falcon, and the Star Destroyer. That's 6 sets. The prequel trilogy UCS sets are this Darth Maul, the Naboo Starfighter, this General Grievous, Obi-Wan's Jedi Starfighter, and now, finally, the gunship. And honestly, out of all 5 of these, I think the gunship is the only one that has any effort put into it. Let's take a brief look through each of these, starting with the Darth Maul. Also note, Yoda does not count as a prequel trilogy UCS set, this is clearly his episode 5 version. Also, while I'm here, these are not UCS sets. They are not UCS sets, please stop calling them that. Anyway, Darth Maul released in 2001 before UCS sets were really a thing. It contained 1,868 pieces and sold for $150. And while it did have a limited run and didn't necessarily sell poorly, it hasn't necessarily been regarded as a good set. I mean, it's just really, really creepy, and everyone I know who has it in person has consistently talked about how weird and unsettling it actually is. Also, the instructions did this weird thing where it was a top-down view, making the build process a little more challenging than it really should be. Outside of extreme collectors, this really isn't a set that I've seen people going after, and I'm not surprised. Then, the next year in 2002, we got this special edition Naboo Starfighter, which was officially part of the Ultimate Collector series. This set contained only 187 pieces and retailed for $40, which isn't really much, but is still really expensive for 187 pieces. And yeah, they did have the chrome parts, which was really nice, but again, I've seen a lot of people complain about just how tiny this is and how it really shouldn't be counted as UCS because of that. And as someone who owns this set, I have to agree, it looks nice, but there's nothing really collector about this. And I'm guessing it didn't sell too well because we did not get another prequel set until 2008 with this General Grievous, and I'm not gonna lie, this thing looks terrible. I mean, just look at it. It barely looks like Grievous. It can barely stand up. You cannot pose it or anything. And honestly, I am not surprised this did not do too well. 1,085 pieces for a retail price of $90 was pretty good. In fact, I actually got this when it came out, and I have consistently forgotten that this thing exists. Based off of ratings and things I've seen, it's not generally well regarded. I mean, people tend to be 50-50 on it. Some people really like this, some people really, really don't like this. Either way, that actually says a lot, because think about things like the Millennium Falcon, which is generally really highly regarded. But then, in 2010, we got the, what was until now, final prequel trilogy UCS set with Obi-Wan's Jedi Starfighter. Once again, a very small set at only 676 pieces and a $100 asking price. And while I personally do really like how this set looks, it's really not that highly regarded, and again, often forgotten about, because why this set? In fact, why any of this? Like, LEGO says that they weren't making prequel trilogy sets because they weren't selling well, but look at the 4 that we got. Look how bad most of these really are. You have one that honestly just looks terrible to the point that LEGO never made anything like it again. One that is extremely tiny and can barely be considered UCS. One that looks pretty bad as well, and again is absolutely nothing like anything else that LEGO has made. And one that, while it does look good, is still pretty small, and I just don't understand why this vehicle was chosen. Think about everything that we could have gotten. From episode 1, we could have gotten the Lucrehulk droid control ship, we could have gotten the AAT, the MTT, even that like Gungan sub that Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon use. Or a pod racer, or even like the Royal Starship that they use. But no, we got a bust of Darth Maul. And the Naboo, which again does look good, it's just not collector. Okay, what about episode 2, where again, we could have gotten the Naboo Royal Starship that we see at the beginning of the film, or the ATTE, the dropship, the gunship which we finally got, the Hailfire droid, the Spider droid, or even Jango Fett's Slave 1. You know what? I would have liked that. In episode 3, we could have gotten the Lucrehulk, the Venator, whatever this other starship from the Separatist is, the Invisible Hand, ETA-2 Jedi-class starfighters, Vulture droids, Tri-Fighter droids, the Soulless One, the AT-AP, the AT-RT, the AT-OT, the Turbo Tank, the Wookiee Catamaran, the Droid Snail Tank. But instead, we got this pretty horrible looking thing of General Grievous. But not only that, think about what other original trilogy sets came out around that time. Between Darth Maul and the Naboo Starfighter, we got the Rebel Blockade Runner, which is a tremendous set. The 4 UCS sets that we got before Grievous were the Death Star 2, the AT-ST, Vader's TIE Advance, and the Ultimate Collector's Millennium Falcon, which was at the time the biggest LEGO set ever. Before Obi-Wan's Jedi Starfighter, we got the Imperial Shuttle, which is probably one of the best UCS sets ever released, and after that, we got the Super Star Destroyer, which is also a really good set, and I want to point out that both the Imperial Shuttle and the Super Star Destroyer came with minifigures, while Obi-Wan's Starfighter did not. The quality of the sets that LEGO was making for the original trilogy were, in my opinion, considerably higher than those they were making for the prequel trilogy. And yeah, some of these sets have been remade, as I said, and there's various reasons for that. New pieces, molds, part availability, techniques, or just needing to update old sets. Like the original Star Destroyer actually sags pretty badly, but even that, which released the same time as the Naboo Starfighter, was still a really good set in its own right. It is mind-boggling that we have gotten all of these super iconic things from the original trilogy, to the point that they wanted to make the TIE Bomber, which barely makes an appearance, and yet it took 21 years to get an iconic vehicle from the prequel trilogy. But there's still more than that, because as some of you might know, I actually used to work at the LEGO store, and I was in charge of the stock room. I happened to work there when the Falcon was released, and so I know some of the limitations of my local store. It's been a few years, so obviously some things have definitely changed, but as far as I'm aware, most of it is pretty much the same. Like, I could probably walk into that stock room and know where everything is. When we received Millennium Falcons, we were limited to 24. There was a few reasons for this. First, it's an $800 set, you're not going to be selling 100 of them in a day. Second, it's a 35-pound box that takes up a lot of room. We had to find and make room for them because they just don't fit on the shelves. And third, of course, pallet limitations. But I also know that when we got sets in, like the Y-Wing, we got like 100 of them when that first came out. Now, again, this is because the Y-Wing was only $200 and it was a much smaller set, the box was smaller, and so we were able to store more of them. Now, this gunship is $350, so a little more expensive than your typical UCS set, still half as much as the Millennium Falcon, and the box for the gunship is about 2 or 3 inches longer than that of the Falcon. However, it's only about a third as deep. In other words, it is in my opinion that if they can fit 24 Falcons, they should be able to fit at least twice as many gunships in the store. Easily. I mean, seriously, I had to make room for 24 Falcons every single week alongside sets like the roller coaster, the Disney Castle, and some pretty big sets, and we made it work every single time. So, when I went to my LEGO store on the 1st to get my set, as I was waiting to enter, I asked the manager how many gunships did they get in, and they told me they only received 27. There were easily 100, maybe 150 people in line that day, and LEGO only sent 27. That is pathetic, and that is really disingenuous as well. You cannot go out there and tell people to buy this set if they want more prequel trilogy sets, and then not even give them the option to do so because you can't even be bothered to send a decent amount to your stores. Yes, every single store is different. Not every single store got 27, some obviously got more, some got less, it depends. But we absolutely should have gotten more than that. Because while they obviously will restock and send more out there, here's something that you need to keep in mind. Now, let's say that when the Millennium Falcon released, LEGO sent out 500 total. That's it, that they just sent out 500 and all 500 sold. Now, that would look good. LEGO can go out and be like, hey, look, all of these Millennium Falcons sold. People must really like this style of set. But then let's say that the gunship comes out and they only ever send out 100 total. Now, all 100 might still sell, but LEGO could easily just be like, well, look, the Falcon sold 500, but the gunship only sold 100, completely ignoring the fact they never gave the opportunity for more to sell. Now, obviously, I am not saying that that is what LEGO is doing, that's just a thought experiment. However, it is a little weird that for a set which costs half as much as the Falcon and is a third of the size, they sent pretty much the same amount. And while I'm certain someone's gonna try to be telling me about logistics and this and that, please do remember, I worked there specifically doing that. I actually know what I'm talking about here. So you should go and buy this set. Not just because I said to, or M&R said to, or someone else said to, but because we deserve more prequel sets. It's been 16 years since episode 3 came out. There are people halfway through high school who were born after episode 3 came out, and yet this is the 5th prequel trilogy set we've gotten, and the first that is actually really good. And LEGO, these things don't go unnoticed. The people who are buying these collector sets, while definitely still fans of the original trilogy, are starting to be more and more people like me. People who grew up with the prequels. Look, I don't want another TIE Fighter. I don't want another remake. I want a Venator. I mean, I like you, LEGO, but this is why when people tell me that you are superior, I just laugh, because you just do not care. But okay, that is enough ranting for me today. Please do let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comments down below, or what else did I need to talk about and just didn't? Am I the only one who even feels this way? I'm not sure. But if you like this video, do please consider liking it and subscribing if you want to see more. Also, a huge thank you to all of my patrons. It's always nice to see more names on that list. Thank you all so much for your support, especially people like Jonathan and Project Elements. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you next time.